We are back. We are live here on the latest episode of the Dream Shakerz podcast. I'm your host, George Nunez, here alongside my co-host.
Stephon Odom.
And today we have the pleasure of introducing a special one, Jelece Morris, a Jamaican American / Queens native and a graduate of the University of Florida, where she obtained a BS in computer engineering, Georgia Tech, where she obtained a Master's of Science in Industrial and Systems Engineering, and she went to Wharton School, for those who don't know, University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, where she earned her MBA. Jelece is a co-founder / CFO of BoCa Flavor and is also a current associate at the management consulting firm A.T. Kearney. She has had previous experiences at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, ExxonMobil, Texas Instruments, and IBM. In addition to these roles, she's also provided feedback and targeted guidance to future generations of professions and scholars via her contributions to modern guild and the art of applying. And also, who could forget ML4T, Management Leadership for Tomorrow. So welcome to the pod, Jelece Morris.
Thank you. Hey, everyone.
How are you feeling, Jelece? Tell us what's going on.
I'm feeling good. It's midweek, things are good. Living life here, living the dream.
And that is amazing, right? Because a lot of people, they want to live the dream, but in order to live the dream, you gotta come from a certain background, or you gotta come from a certain upbringing. So how was it growing up in New York City, being a Queens native, and living sometime in Florida with a Jamaican background, growing up in a Jamaican household? What was that like?
It was, I look back now and I can say it was good. When both your parents are immigrants, there's a little bit more of a stronghold on making sure that your kids stay out of trouble, making sure you do the right thing, education first and foremost. I think I got a lot of my work ethic from my family. There's like a running joke that Jamaicans have a gajillion jobs and they're always got their hand in a bunch of stuff. And even though I never classified people in my family as entrepreneurs or in that light, I look back now and I see how many skills everybody in my family had. My dad, we almost never brought people into the house because he could fix the car, the refrigerator, the plumbing, do the wall, he could, fix anything, or he'll figure it out. And I think that figure it out mentality has definitely been a huge part of who I am.
So building directly off of that and that mentality, how did you ultimately decide that you were going to forge a career in tech, at least at the undergraduate level, with the pursuit of that bachelor's degree in computer engineering?
Yeah, I wish I could say that I had this deep passion, but to be honest, after high school, going to college was like a no-brainer for me. I just knew that I wanted a better situation. I have a few older folks in my family, and when you get a chance to see some options for what happens after high school, you're like, let me try something a little different. So I knew going to college was a no-brainer for me. What I ended up studying came because my aunt used to work for an aerospace company called Gulfstream. And she was like, oh, you should check out this aerospace engineering thing. Had no idea what that was, didn't know what an engineer did. But I knew I was good at math and science. And that's really the foundation that most people talk about. Like, do you like math? Do you like science? And then what kind of cemented it for me as, I don't know how it might sound, but I looked at the salaries and I was like, this don't seem bad either. So for me, it was about, let's create a good foundation for myself so that when I do get a chance to do what I want, I have something to back me up to make those types of more risky decisions. So that was really how I got into computer engineering, and then just seeing the world around us and thinking more about automation. That's kind of how my brain already worked. Computer engineering seemed like the wave, and it is the wave.
Hey, Jelece, so I'm hearing tech, I'm hearing salaries. When you think of those two, usually uh, people are hesitant to go back and pursue an MBA. So what made you go and pursue an MBA at UPenn, and after obtaining a master's at Georgia Tech? Like, walk us through that process. So we're
Mhm.
curious. Like how did that MBA play in your favor?
Yeah, I love to tell people all master's degrees are not created equal. That master's of science and what an MBA looks like are very different. I have a little brother, he just started school this week, and I said, I don't care what you study, do whatever you want. You now have the space to do that, but make sure you take some business classes. Because at the core of everything, how everything runs, if you don't know good business skills, if you don't understand the basics of finance, the basics of marketing, like people are going to walk all over you when you try to do anything in life, you know. So for me, getting the degree really came, I was a couple years into working after my first master's and found myself at a standstill, kind of repositioning myself and saying, I'd like to do this every few years. I did it actually last week, last month, and say, like, now that I've accomplished these things, they've led me to this space, like, let me recenter, let me realign and make sure that this is what I want to be doing. And I had that moment before I went to business school. I happened to jump into MLT because another Gator said, oh, you should check this out. I was feeling like I wasn't learning as much as I should have, you know, thinking more progressively about where I wanted to be long-term in my career. And I didn't know about an MBA. You know, I don't have any Ivy League folks in my family or MBAs, so I didn't really have that network, but they told me about MLT. So I wrote down my essay, did the application. I know it's like incredibly competitive these days. It was back then too. And I remember writing out what I thought I wanted to do, and I sent it over to the guy who recommended it to me, and he was like, "Oh no," he was like, "You haven't really shaped it out." And what I feel like MLT gave me was the playbook for me to understand who I am and what I wanted to do. It's not that I didn't know these things; I didn't know how to articulate them. And once I got a better sense of how all of the experiences that I've had in life shaped me and where I am today and where I wanted to be, for me, the next natural process was an MBA. But I also have tons of friends who I went through the process with who decided out of that an MBA wasn't for them. And I think that's the beauty of the process, right? No matter where you end up on the other side of that MLT MBA prep experience, you're going to know so much more about yourself and your worth to then take the next steps in life. So that's how I ended up back in business school. For me, it was about getting a more global mindset, learning more about the business of healthcare, and just being a more, you know, culturally minded person in general.
Keeping in line with that same thread of logic, you have this experience, go off to business school, and you are able to then successfully transition into another firm, right? You have that first summer experience at Kearney, and then you ultimately sign on full time with the
Yeah.
firm. It seems as if, though, then, everything is seemingly aligned. How did you ultimately decide then that you're going to pivot and start up this new offering that was focused around food via e-commerce?
So I wish I could say it was a pivot, but they're all happening at the same time. I When I got to Wharton, you know, like I said, similar to when I went to undergrad, I knew that I wanted to create a foundation for myself. So getting a job after school was never really like, am I going to get a job? It was like I knew that's what I wanted to do. I understood the value of consulting, and you know, I've shared with many people. I think it's a great career opportunity right out of undergrad that I wish I had explored because of how quickly you learn. Um, when I sat down in my orientation, we had all these like career exploration worksheets and workshops. And when I went through mine after, you know, now being at a space where I know who I am, I know what I want, and I did all the tests and checked on the questions. And here come the results. And my top two, I don't remember the third one actually, but I remember the top two were entrepreneurship and management consulting. And I was like, entrepreneurship, what? I need to know when the check is going to come. I need to know what my benefits are going to be. I was like, that seemed like a very foreign concept to me, to own my own business, to do my own thing. But I'm already took a leap of faith, had quit my job, came back to business school. I said, if any time is going to be the time to take a risk and to explore, this is going to be the time. So I did try to launch a feminine care business while in business school. And I thought it was a great opportunity for me to really cement what I was learning in business school, because I looked at everything from a business lens. Like I was like, how do I apply this to what I'm trying to build? I ultimately decided to shut that business down because I learned a ton about what it means to be a solo founder and building a business. But the pivot to food really, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a pivot to food. I am a foodie. Like food and music are at the center of everything happy in my life.
What's your favorite food?
You know, actually now it's Thai food. I don't know. I'm really like a huge fan of Thai food these days. But like my go-to foods are like shrimp, avocado, like the foods that I could just like eat over and over and over again. I don't know. I'm also a health nut, so I eat a lot of like good, like healthy foods that I think are amazing. So yeah.
Give us in the audience a few examples. What are some of these healthy? Because I dabble in that space a bit too.
And this guy Steph laughs at me because I drink smoothies all the time, and he likes smoothies too, which is very hilarious. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, I love a good smoothie, a green-based smoothie. Put some coconut water in there. You know, I love all of my berry fruits, all of them. The strawberries, blackberries are my go-to. I'm a fan of grapes, yogurt, granola. I'm thinking all the things I ate today. Almonds, craisins, and I will just eat all of those things, especially now, you know, given, you know, immobility or not as much movement. Like I really try to make sure that even though I'm eating so much, that I'm eating a lot of good things that will nourish the body. And similarly, when I was thinking about, you know, now I'm home, I took this consulting job thinking I'm gonna be on the road, somebody else is gonna be footing the bill. And then here I am, as much as I love to cook, I found myself at home and cooking a lot more and thinking this is such a process. Like I started to almost hate cooking because I'm like, it just requires so much effort to create something that tastes good. But I generally love hosting people and like making other people feel good through food. And when I found myself cooking a lot more, I was like, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And one of the pain points that I had identified, and my co-founder, who's also a huge foodie, Haitian American, so we know good food. I was like, why am I taking down 6 and 7 bottles of seasoning to get chicken to taste, you know, halfway decent, to get any shrimp to taste halfway decent? I'm taking down these all-purpose, but this all-purpose is not my all-purpose. And so adding a dash of this, a dash of that, a dash of this, a dash of that, and us coming up with this concept, like, we know we're not the only ones that have this experience with, you know, wanting to cook food, wanting to cook healthy food. We want to bring in some of what we grew up with. So when we think about, like, you know, the Scotch bonnet, the allspice, like thinking of some of the flavors that we grew up with on both sides of the, not both sides of the island, but, you know, coming from our respective islands, it's like, there's got to be a way that we can create something and package it together. And that's really how BoCa Flavor and our flagship product, Taino Spice, came about, was us really getting in the kitchen, putting it together and saying, like, what's the blend that's like our version of all purpose that embodies the all natural essence of the Caribbean, that isn't just jerk and curry. Love those flavors to death, but we have worn those out. We have worn them out. We get it. Jamaican jerk, we get it. Even though some people try it and that ain't it. We were like, let's bring something new outside of the international aisle. Like, how do we position ourselves to say that the flavors from our islands are just as good as what you see in the regular spice aisle? So that's how it came about.
So we hear the spice. We hear Chef Jelece in the house on the pod today, right? But let's get a bit deeper. What's the future aspirations for BoCa Flavor? Is there interest in seeing the product line of the shelves of distribution like Whole Foods or Publix, or would you and your co-founder prefer if the sales channel remain direct to consumer?
Our big thesis is around how do we expand the taste of the flavors to become more of a everyday household. And so for us, that expansion and, what avenue is still to be determined. We want to make sure that we align with someone that celebrates and supports what we're trying to do. That is to be determined, but the goal is to really make this more of an everyday staple for people, and to expand that line by creating other mixes that people can use for different things. But we wanted to make sure we started at the basis with an all-purpose that literally people have used on shrimp, chicken, salads, popcorn, brownies. Like, the feedback that we get from our customers of how they're using this spice has been, the seasoning has been overwhelmingly inspirational, I'll say. Is there a thing? There are ways that we have used it and marketed it that our customers are just using very differently, and we're like, we got to learn from how we're seeing people use it as to how we can continue to grow and expand our product line.
That moment of individual ownership on behalf of the consumer, right, I think is incredibly unique, and or rather incredibly unique to the category of food, right? Because it has different meanings to different people. And one thing that you mentioned, prior to our conversation today was that storytelling was going to be a critical aspect of the brand. So can you speak to how BoCa Flavor leverages storytelling as a means to enhance the core set of products?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I'm Jamaican American. My co-founder is Haitian American, coming from two very distinct cultures, both that I celebrate wholeheartedly. And bringing them together to do a business, I think, is in itself a very unique experience. And then when we think about just the origins of the spices that we're using, and many of them, and we know the story, the story of the history of Black folks and where a lot of the spices really come from and how they got to our islands and how we've now leveraged them and made them kind of staple in our houses, really fusing those together and thinking about that community and that unity that we're able to create in a bottle amongst food, something that has been a unifying aspect of life for any culture. You look at any culture and you think about how food plays into bringing people together, and giving an experience of culture and tradition. Food is the way to do it. And so when we think about celebration, food is there too. And so this concept of unity and community and happiness, it's what creates this bold Caribbean flavor. That's why we named it BoCa Flavor, that we want to share with everyone.
Now let's stay on a similar topic of entrepreneurship, but switch gears a bit and talk about consulting. Consultants often remark how, consulting itself can feel like entrepreneurship, right? Due to the search for projects, the management of your own personal brand within the firm, and the high intensity that comes as a result of meeting client deadlines. So how do you feel your skills from A.T. Kearney and IBM ultimately help carry over?
Consulting is a monster. It's a joy, though. One of the things that I have loved about the clients that I've worked with, and I've worked with some amazing clients, to be honest, over the past years, the experiences and problems that they'll bring to us. We're not a framework I've never worked for a framework type of company. And so really coming into it like white slate, let's really understand what their problem is, right? Because half the time, the problem is never the problem that actually exists. It's just the problem that they want us to solve. And so this being in a constant state of mind of problem solving and really thinking about that client, I can't take what I did for company A and put it to company B and say, oh, the same thing is going to work. Like, that's just not how life happens. Like, they don't have the same team, they don't have the same resources, they don't have the same org design. So it's going to be very different. And so taking those same principles of, how do you construct companies that will go on to operationally be efficient, that will create the team dynamics, that will execute on the overall mission and strategy. Those are things that I'm constantly doing repetitiously amongst all of my different clients. And so those are some of the key skill sets that I'm able to take with me into entrepreneurship. That, and now I work for a company that focuses heavily on supply chain, and everything e-commerce is really based on supply chain, like really understanding the make, the plan, the source, the deliver, understanding that whole spectrum, and ways to optimize and make it more efficient, not only for us, as being the people that are doing it, but for the, always having a consumer mindset in mind as well.
So we didn't delve very deep into the other member of the BoCa Flavor team, rather, but we feel like that should be highlighted. So how did you and your co-founder meet, right? And then what have been some of the ways that you've supported each other during these initial stages of creating and scaling the company?
Yeah, so Suzanne Talika, we met back at the University of Florida. She was an electrical engineer and I was a computer engineer. So we had some hardware classes overlapping, doing the circuits, soldering, all types of techie stuff in the labs. And I remember looking over at her, and we already stand out, two Black women in engineering. I could distinctly remember four in all the time that I've been there. Suzanne stood out to me because she had these leopard shoes on. And I looked over like, who is this girl with these leopard shoes on? I'm like, you stand out, right? So it's a classroom full of guys and us two. We're coming in with our toolbox and we're making these circuits. But from there, I knew that she was definitely different. And we have managed to maintain our friendship despite living in different places and in same places at various points in our lives. We were at Florida together. We lived in the same Atlanta metropolitan area together. I lived in DC and she's now in Maryland, all in various times, some of it overlapping. And so that has helped to continue to build our friendship. And she's always been a person who I thought was just incredibly creative. She's been probably one of the first entrepreneurs that I knew. Back in undergrad, she had a clothing business before all this fast fashion like really blew up. So think a decade plus ago, she had her own online boutique. And so a lot of those attributes that I saw in her in terms of being a leader, being a creative thinker, watching her step into the corporate world and then come out and bet on herself and create a franchise called Clothes Mentor, really following her artistic passion and seeing that now translate into BoCa Flavor. I mean, a lot of those things are the reasons why we remain friends and thought it was a great idea for us to start this business together.
Wow. And I would say, right, could you go a bit deeper in terms of the chemistry, like working styles? Like, how did you know that this person I can literally work with? Because sometimes co-founders may meet along the way, they may meet in college, they may meet before then, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't pan out the way they would like. So what was that deciding factor where it was like, all right, this chemistry literally works?
To be honest, you never really know, right? You're betting, right? It's kind of like a marriage. Like you know you like this person a lot. They've got a lot of the attributes that you think that you need in a partner. You gel well together, and you trust in the foundation, right? Different new situations, new years, they'll all present new opportunities for you to continue to learn more about each other. And none of us are the same as we were a decade ago. So for me, what makes it stick is seeing someone be the consistent foundation pieces, be consistent in the 10 years, right? She always follows through, right? She's always, showing up. She's always being creative. Like the foundational pieces have always been there. She also has an MBA. She's also had a business before. So understanding like, okay, like this is not a stagnant person. This is someone who wants to continue to grow. And I talked about, the space and time where I felt like I wasn't growing, but this thirst for knowledge, this thirst to want to continue to build not only ourselves, but find opportunities even within our company to build for the community. And like, how do we have the same heart that we have towards our families and our communities, not just domestically, but even abroad? So a lot of the things that we had talked about, and we probably took a good 6-8 months before we were like, okay, I think we we want to like cement this and build something. But this was never really meant to be a business. We came up with something that was good to us, shared it with a few people. They said it was good. And I mean, that's really how a lot of businesses start. You experiment, come up with an MVP. Hey, what do you think about this? And then the rest of it is, do we have the business acumen behind it to really put it in play? Because it's one thing to have a cute product. That's cute. But can you sell it? Can you get it to the customers? Can you handle customer service? So I think all of those things. But going back, when you think about co-founders, I really look at the foundation of folks and how consistent people are before making a decision, and always have an operating agreement. Friends and no friends have a very thorough operating agreement for how you want to run the business. That way it all comes down to what the document says.
Given that explanation, and given the fact that you both, you and your co-founder, operate out of separate cities, have you both decided where the company will be based out of, given Atlanta's growing status as a future tech hub and a future Black tech hub?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, is the city one you're both currently considering as a future home?
It's always open and on the table. Right now, the majority of our operations are occurring in Maryland, and we've gotten tremendous love from the county and the city up there. So we're gonna stay there as long as it keeps loving on us. But we're certainly always open to opportunities where they fall. And I'm very proud to be a part of where I see growth happening. So we could be a part of that play in a few years too.
Well, there seems to be a very strong social impact component built into the BoCa Flavor brand, and this seen by the contributions or commitments that the company has made to the What If Foundation and Food for the Poor. So why was supporting these businesses so critical to you and your co-founder, and in what ways do you intend to expand on this work?
Yeah. So one thing we often get asked is like, who are our target customers? Now, while our mothers love it and we are very appreciative that they love it, we're never really necessarily going for the Caribbean demographic as our initial target audience. Our thing is really to expand and to say this is good for all. And when we thought about that, we said we can't feed everybody else and not make sure that the people from our countries are also being fed. And so having that thought, we looked around for, who are the organizations that are on the ground. I know you've heard all of the mess that has happened in previous years where certain nonprofits, get money, but they don't really go on the ground and do the right work. So we wanted to work with organizations who are on the ground, actually implementing the initiatives and had consistent programming with leadership that we believed in. The What If Foundation for us was a no-brainer. That is actually co-founded by Suzanne's late uncle. And so the work that he did in Haiti alongside, her name is escaping me right now, but the work that organization has been doing has just been phenomenal in terms of the food programs that they have, the schools that they've been able to build. And Food for the Poor has done a lot of work, especially when the hurricane season comes, in terms of shelter and food. And those are really like a lot of the, thinking about the necessities of what people need. It doesn't cost us but so much to, offer a contribution to these organizations. But for us, it's really about spotlighting them and saying, how can we not only uplift our brand, but also give recognition and awareness to some of the work that's happening in the Caribbean islands?
There is an apparent exposure in that, like, the lack of food quality is inevitable, and healthy food or foods is a constant source of concern for members of the BIPOC community / background.
They don't build Whole Foods in all the communities.
Unfortunately, right?
Not a jab at Whole Foods, just saying there's not fresh food available in many of the areas. I just had this conversation. We talk about the corner stores in many of the underserved areas. They got Snapple hot Cheetos. Hope you get your vitamin D from that. It's like, we got to do better for our people.
And, you know, there's definitely the chicken spots, the liquor stores, right? Pizza stores, fast food restaurants, all of that, right? To your point. And it often leads to larger issues like high blood pressure, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. Like in these food swamps and food deserts, you promise to use fresh, non-GMO and MSG-free ingredients in your products. What this done as a direct response to such issues. Also, what's the sodium content of these products? Just for the audience's knowledge.
Yeah, no, very intentional. We knew that we weren't trying to be a part of the problem, but we wanted to create something that was healthy and good. So one of the things we were incredibly mindful of is salt content. You know, when both of us look at our family health history and we think about the laundry lists of things that they say, like, does anybody in your family have these? Between the both of us, we were checking all the boxes. And so for us, it's like, how do we not contribute to that? But how do we give people something that is good, that is all natural, not overly processed, that doesn't have, you know, all the extra chemical ingredients for, you know, extra to preserve things for 5 years when it should not be lasting for 5 years. Like, you gotta throw that spice out. It's gotta go. But really making it as, you know, right now we're all of the spices, I actually have one here, so you can take a look. This is our Taino spice. All of them are handcrafted. You can see all of this goodness grounded. We work with grassroots farmers, so we're like very intentional about even who we source from, making sure that the right labor protocols are in place. But back to your question, really on the content of the healthy content was a very intentional choice for us, like very intentional and very much a part of who we are as a brand.
Okay, well, with that, that's all the questions we have for you today. That is the interview, except there is the tried and true final Dream Shakers question, wherein we ask, what are 3 pieces, that's right, 3 pieces of advice you would give to your younger self? Because we value paying it forward here at Dream Shakers.
Yeah. So many things. But boiling it down to 3 things, they're probably the lessons that I took out of MLT, which I wish I knew my younger self. You know, always bet on yourself. Take risk, even if what you're saying doesn't make sense to anyone else but you and God. That's all you need. Keep it pushing.
Amen. Say that one more time. Say that one more time.
Take risk, even if it only makes sense to you and God. That's all you need. And invest is what I would have told my younger self. Save until you have enough to make it, and then invest. Have the foundation and then invest. My brother's graduation gift, a Roth IRA, because I'm not playing those games. He's 18.
That was amazing. That was a lot of fire, a lot of gems and jewels being thrown. We definitely appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by the pod. And we hope to have you for future episodes, because we want to see where you're taking BoCa Flavor, right? We want to see where Jelece is in her life, in her career. And we want to see how you continue to pay it forward. But thank you again, and we look forward to nurturing this relationship and seeing where you go.
And
absolutely.
And also, while we didn't get to connect with Suzanne this time around, we hope to have her on the next time you guys drop by the pod.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to be back. We'd love to see what you guys are doing, and really wish you both the best of luck. This is an amazing platform, so thank you both for the opportunity.